thank you for your presentation. I think the work you do is extremely important. And I have some questions around the organisation. I think you were established in 2001. And is that under a particular department?
DESA was established in 2001 by the then Department of Social Welfare. And at that time, the department had a considerable amount of funding going in to develop local community development projects rather than to build up communities and to develop economic kind of capability in local communities. The department wanted, though, and this is going back to 2001, that there would be a specialist support agency to ensure those local community development projects would be inclusive of people with disabilities. So DESA was established with a fund from the department, and that's how we commenced, and that's where our initial many years of work went into working with community development projects under area partnerships to ensure they were inclusive. So that's the origins of DESA. We did apply for and get other funding projects, short-term funding projects, such as the LAC. And we engaged with that because we believed it was moving towards what DESA was trying to do, was to get, on the one hand, the mainstream services in any local community to be inclusive, but we also thought that the LAC would provide a real demonstration project, that this actually with a local coordinator, with local kind of activity and engagement with different community projects, it would actually open doors and include people with disabilities. And I think what's happened in the CRPD has actually now changed the game in that it has strengthened the framework through which all of us now have to look at disability and inclusion, and provided a kind of pressure and structure to ensure that we are all trying to include and look at what's involved in the CRPD. So on the one hand, the mainstream policies of, say, for new directions for people with disabilities was trying to change the disability provision system to move towards the community. What DESA was trying to do was to move and prepare the community for that inclusion. Okay.
And if I could add to that,
yeah.
Sorry, we were initially part of the Community Development Programme going back to 2001, and then that comprised community development projects, CDPs, and family resource centres. And then at some point, that programme was finished, and the FRCs became part of the FRC programme under the Family Support Agency, and we went with them there. We were core funded under that programme, and we were also core funded under the Local and Community Development Programme, which in turn became the Local Development and Social Inclusion Programme with partnership companies.
So is that who funds you now?
No,
then?
because we're not a local development company.
Okay.
So now we're funded by the Department of Rural and Community Development as under the scheme to support national organisations.
Okay. So the work you do on an ongoing basis is that, have you, is to roll out different projects? Is it to address inclusion in different spheres? Or is there a constant engagement with organisations and local authorities, etc.?
Yeah. It's to build capacity of the community development sector primarily. I mean, that's why we were established. The community development organisations in the C&V sector have a role and a responsibility around social inclusion, and our job is to bring the technical capacity to organisations so that they understand what we mean by disability. They're able to identify what are the barriers within my organisation or my local community, and how do we address those barriers that prevent inclusion. So over the years we have published guidance documents on inclusive playground design, on accessible community facilities. We developed and published a social inclusion charter for family resource centres to sign up to in the context of the CRPD. So it's very much about building the capacity of organisations that have a social inclusion remit to be inclusive of disabled people and families.
And say for some of the projects like you've one there for parents of disabled people, or even the e-learning that you referred to there. I mean, how are participants identified for that? So say, is it through FRC or is it through another organisation that you're working with?
Well, we work in partnership as much as possible. So whether families and parents come through the Family Resource Centre or the Children and Young People Services Committee structure is another body that we would partner with quite closely. So really the people we work with, they come from a variety of sources. The FRCs in particular are an entity that we would work closely with.
Okay.
But we went to work with, like the family resource centres were a community resource to support families. So we would work with them initially to make sure they were including people with disabilities. But then that led to the development of the Empowering Parents programme, because you'll find many parents, and I'm sure you've heard it from other organisations, parents are often of a child with a disability and an adult with a disability struggle right through many years of trying to obtain, find out about, access programmes or supports, right? And one of the things you'll hear from parents many times is, I was afraid to ask a question. I was afraid to question what service we were getting because we might find ourselves excluded or left out. So the Empowering Parents programme was a short, it's delivered during the COVID times, we delivered it through Zoom, but it was to provide parents with a sense of our child is a citizen of the state and has rights the same as everybody else. And their right to engage in a full life in a community is the same right as somebody going to third level or Trinity College. So the Empowering Parents programme came out of our initial contact and with the family resource centres and has now become quite a powerful tool to give parents a sense of, actually, we have a right. And with the CRPD, that again reinforces that and allows that change of attitude from accepting services or pleading for services to actually saying, my child has a right.
Okay. And just to finish here, so they are ongoing all of the time, but the LAC one was just a pilot programme. Yes. But a very important pilot programme that should be rolled out in other areas, definitely.
And in our view, I think it's fair to say we were very disappointed it did not continue because it was very effective. And the National Disability Authority did a review of these projects, and they in turn were saying this is a good model. It works in Australia, it works in New Zealand and other countries, but it did not develop beyond that.
Okay. And you asked the question, Minister, where it would be funded now. I mean, I think the obvious place would be the Department of Equality, Children, Equality, Disability and Integration in Youth.